Hello everyone, and in this video we are going to take a look at pose control. And what pose control allows you to do is be able to save either the entire pose of your character, multiple different poses of your character, and be able to quickly apply them to the same character or different characters, or even parts of the body, like things like the hand. Be able to apply those poses to, like, say you pose one hand a particular way and you want it to be posed the same way on the other hand. You can pose the other hand that way using this pose control option. You could do things like legs, feet. You could do individual parts of the control rig. It's a really powerful feature in MotionBuilder, and it's an important one to have kind of in your toolkit because it can help to speed up the process of editing your motion capture animations. So to start this off, I'm going to head over to the asset browser here and drag in the test model from one of our previous labs that we had, and I'm going to do this with no animation. So now that I have this rigged character into the scene, and this is a character that's already been characterized, as you can see. So you would have to characterize your character and have it set up ahead of time to be able to use this feature. And the characterizations are here inside the navigator. If I select it here, you can see that if I go to the character definition, all of those different options have been set. So if I open up base here, we'll see it's got all of the hips. And all the other joints attached to it. Alright, so the pose control works with the control rig in Human IK. So if we go up to the Human IK button here, we could create a control rig for our character. And we're going to create an FK-IK rig for the character. And the FK-IK rig is great because you can grab all the different joint controls on the character controller and be able to edit those. And if you remember, there's the full IK which allows you to edit the entire body, right, with full chromatics. There's also partial IK, which will only do like part of the body, okay. And there's also the individual controls, okay. For now, I'll go to full body IK, and I'll just return it to its stance pose by clicking on this button here. Alright, so the pose controls are over here in the resources where your asset browser is, and if you select it, you'll see that there's this gray panel here. And let's see if I can get us a little bit more real estate. Gray panel here, this is where the image, it basically takes like a screenshot of whatever your viewport sees and gives it to you so that you can kind of get a preview of what the pose is. There's also controls here for translation and rotation, which we'll take a look at in a minute. Option for mirroring, okay, so to be able to mirror poses. Also to be able to group, FK translation, and some error options here. It's also this option to create a pose, update a pose if you have one that you want to update, copy whatever the pose is, paste, and also delete the poses. So what I'll do with this first one here, this first example, is I'll just kind of pose up the character into a pose here, and you can pose it to whatever you would like it to be. Just make sure that you get all of the different limbs here involved. So pull her elbow down a little bit, and I'll grab this joint here. Maybe rotate the wrist a bit. I'll grab this one. Maybe I'll pull this up a bit. Pull her body, extend it a little bit from the hips. I'll grab this foot joint here, and I'm going to go to global, just to make it a little bit easier to pose this in relationship to the global elements here. I'll take this knee, translate it out a bit, maybe rotate rotate the foot down. Maybe take this, move this out some, and back, and then up. There we go. Rotate your foot down. Grab the head. Rotate it this way. And up a bit. So she's kind of like reaching for the sky here. Almost like a leaping pose. I'll grab this foot here and extend it outward like that. So we've got this whole pose that we've just created. Alright, so once you have the pose created, what you got to do is you got to select all the controls. So if you click on the black area here inside of the Human IK panel, it'll select everything. And you hit the plus key right down here, and you'll see what that'll do is it'll create an image here of our screen that we're seeing. If you don't want the controls, right, what we could do is delete this. So I'll delete this pose. And if you don't want the controls to be visible in there, what you could do is make sure you deselect rotation here, so you don't have the rotation controls. I like to have the control rig be in there just so you can kind of see the pose. And if you hit the plus key, you'll see now it'll take that screenshot without the extra stuff that was visible inside of the scene. Alright, so what we'll do is I'll rename this pose. I'll say girl leap. And what this will do is, so now if I reset this, if I go back here to stance, right, and set her back to her T pose, if I want to get back to that pose again, all I have to do is if I deselect this, right, say that we're back at T pose, nothing is selected. If I select all of the joints again and double click on this pose, it'll put her back into that pose that we just created. Now sometimes things might get a little bit offset on these. So what you could do, this one seems to have pretty much translated the way I would like it to. But if I set this back here and I hold down control and I deselect the legs and the hips and then apply the pose and then select the hips and apply the pose again, that would fix any hip translation, but I didn't put any hip translation on these joints at the moment. Alright, so that's one of the great features of this is that you can create multiple poses and be able to blend between them quickly and easily and keyframe them into your animations. You could also grab poses from your actual motion capture. If you plot the motion capture to a control rig, you could then be able to take poses from there. One of the other things that's great about this is that you could create mirror poses. So if I select the mirror option here, and double click, you'll see that it'll mirror the pose. And what I could do from there now is select all the joints and then create a mirrored version of this. So I could call this girl leap and then rename it girl leap, which I didn't do. Looks like it mirrored the original. Oh no, it's because I still have mirror on. Okay, so if I shut mirror off and double click it, it'll change it back. So I had to shut it off to change it back, but I was just trying to rename it. So I'm going to rename this girl leap mirrored. Alright, so now we have a mirrored version of that pose. Now, right now we've been doing these poses with the entire body, but we don't need to just do this with the entire body. We can actually set this up so that it mirrors a specific region, like the hands. So I'm going to go back to the stance pose here, and I'm going to zoom in on her left hand here. So I'm just going to translate over a bit. Now to quickly access the hand controls, I could go to the Human IK panel and click on this little arrow here, go to left hand view, and I could select these controls. I'm just control clicking all of the finger joints, and I'm going to turn on the rotate tool, and I'm going to rotate her fingers closed. Okay, and I could also select the thumb here and maybe use the translation to kind of translate this a bit, and then further rotate that in. And right now, because it's in global rotation, if I do local, I'll be able to rotate that in line with her thumb. So changing from local to global is right here in the interface panel. Alright, so I have a pose here. Now, what I could do here is I could collect that pose by selecting all these joints, right? All these controls, I mean, not the joints, but the controls. And I'm holding down control while I'm clicking on those. And I could create a new pose here. So I'm going to zoom in on the hand here so that my screenshot shows mainly the hand. And then I'll hit the plus button inside the pose control panel, and you'll see that it gives me this screenshot of the hand. And what I'll do is rename it. Girl model, say girl fist. Now, say I want to add this pose to the other hand. Because they're duplicate controls, I mean they're similar controls on the other side, what we could do is set up this for the other hand. Now it's important, you have to switch here to the body part option, okay? And I'm going to deselect the hand here and go out and then go into the view for my right hand view. And I'll select all these joints on the right hand, and I'll turn on mirror, and I'll double click girl fist, and you'll see that now this fist has been applied to this hand on the other side of the controller. So we're able to quickly manipulate these poses on our controller using this. And if I want now, I could create a pose from this and call this girl fist right. So I'll call it girl fist right. And I'll rename the other one so that it's left. Alright, so we have a fist for both hands now. Alright, if I go back to the stance pose, right, I need to have all my joints selected for that. So select all my joints here and set her back. I'm going to jump back into one of our leap poses here. And now if I want to take her leap pose, and I think I got mirror still on here, so she's being mirrored. There we go. Whoa, her hand's already posed. How did that happen? Oh, it looks like it posed the hand and saved it on that pose. Let's see. Oh, it looks like these joints weren't selected. There we go. So now we're back to stance. So if I go back to girl leap, oh, you see how I only did part of the pose because I only had that one control. So you can even go in and grab the individual controls and then set them. So if I want to grab this hand here, right? If I grab this control and double click, you'll see it'll only pose that hand now. Pretty neat, right? So you don't have to do the entire thing. You could just do part of it. Alright, so I'm going to go back out to here and set this back to its original stance. And I'm going to jump into the girl leap pose here. And say I want to apply the fist to the left hand. I can go into here, grab those, and then double click. And you'll see now that even though she's in that pose, the mirror pose of her leaping, I'm able to use that hand closed pose to make her hands closed. So you can go in on your control rig before you even apply any motion capture to it and start doing things like posing the hands, posing the feet, posing the legs, whatever, and create these poses so that you can start blending them together and just speeds up editing your animation once you start to put motion capture on it. You can use this in combination with the animation layers to be able to get your animations looking the way you want them to look. Now, there's one last thing that I want to talk about here, and that's these mirror options here. So right now we're in a particular pose, right? And I have the mirror option turned on, and you'll see that it's set to auto. And I do have a mirror plane visible here. And the reason for that, let's see, let's grab the entire controller here. I'm going to go to our stance here, our T-pose, and select all the joints. And with them selected, actually, let's go to Girl Leap here. And with all of them selected, if I turn on mirror, the reason why I'm getting the mirror pose is because I had this rotation turned off. Like I can actually see the mirror here. Um, hmm. Okay, so let's take a look and see why I can't turn these options back on. Oh, you know what it is? I believe it's because I am not in full body IK. So if you're in full body IK right here, you'll see that it gives you the option to save the pose for rotation. So R is rotation, and then T is translation for X, Y, and Z. And then respect gravity here. I thought it was grouping, but it's respect gravity as opposed to translation and rotation. But that's just mainly on your control rig. Now, if we look at the translation here, what we could do is preserve X translation, Y, and Z. If I shut off rotation here, what it does is it gives me this mirror plane option, which you can toggle on and off using this eyeball. And you can see there's ZY, there's XY, there's XZ, and then there's this custom option, which allows you to be able to pan this particular value here. So if I set this to, I don't know, 3, it should pan it around, alright? And then you can also tilt it like 45 degrees, and it'll mirror it in that specific direction as well. So pretty neat stuff. This is a really useful tool once you start to want to be able to customize your animations. And you know, I've given you a couple of resources to get started with motion capture animation, the Carnegie Mellon set, and anything that you might find at Mixamo or TurboSquid or some other sites that have some animations. You want to be saving those and compiling those together so that you have a starting point to be able to block out animation. A lot of times what will happen is you can pre-visualize your mocap using this canned animation, and then when you get a chance to go into the motion capture system, re-record the whole thing as one take because you already have an idea of what the animation is supposed to look like. Okay, so that's pretty much it for pose control. Just save this out for the assignment and submit it with your different poses that you created. As a matter of fact, if you can, create one more pose of your own here for the end of this one.